Silence didn't just fall over the VIP room of Le Jardin. It crashed down like the crystal wine glass, shattering against the marble floor. Richard Caldwell, a man whose net worth exceeded the GDP of small island nations, stood frozen, his face draining of color until he looked like a wax figure melting under the heat. He stared at the woman, wiping a spill off his Italian loafers, not with anger, but with a primal, suffocating fear. She didn't look up. She just folded her towel, met his terrified gaze with dead shark-like eyes, and whispered 6 words that turned his billion-dollar merger into a death sentence. I used to work in intelligence, and she wasn't talking about her IQ. The restaurant was the kind of place where the water menu had more pages than a standard novel, and the lighting was dim enough to hide the sins of the clientele. Le Jardin, tucked away in the upper crest of Manhattan, was the unofficial cafeteria for the masters of the universe. If you wanted to see who really ran the world, you didn't go to the UN. You came here on a Tuesday night and ordered the truffle risotto. Veronica Tate, Ronnie to the few friends she had, and "Hey you" to the customers, adjusted her apron in the back corridor. She was 42, though the dim lighting and her sharp bone structure allowed her to pass for 35. Her hands were rougher than a waitress's hands should be calloused in specific places, the trigger finger, the knuckles, the heel of the palm. But in a city like New York, nobody looked at hands. They looked at the uniform, and then they looked right through you. Table 4 is a nightmare. Jenny, a 20-year-old college student with wide eyes and trembling hands, whispered as she brushed past Ronnie with a tray of rejected appetizers. The guy in the grey suit sent back the amuse-bouche because he said the plating lacked structural integrity. "Who says that?" Ronnie glanced at the reservation tablet. "Richard Caldwell, CEO Helix Dynamics." She knew the name. Everyone knew the name. Caldwell was the tech darling of the decade, a defense contractor who had pivoted to consumer privacy solutions just in time to make a killing on government contracts. He was loud brash and currently celebrating a hostile takeover of a smaller encryption firm called Cipher Wall. "I'll take table 4, Ronnie said, her voice a low, gravelly hum. "You go handle the tourists on the patio." "Are you sure he's intense?" Jenny warned. "I've handled worse," Ronnie said. She didn't smile. Ronnie rarely smiled unless it was part of the job description, and even then it didn't reach her eyes. She walked onto the floor, the sounds of the kitchen fading into the hushed murmur of the dining room. Table 4 was the prime spot, a circular booth upholstered in velvet, secluded enough for privacy, but visible enough to be envied. Richard Caldwell sat in the center, flanked by 3 other men in suits that cost more than Ronnie's annual rent. One was his lawyer, a weasel-faced man named Peter. The other 2 were silent muscle disguised as junior executives. Caldwell was mid-monologue, gesturing with a fork as if conducting an orchestra. "It's not about the code, Peter. It's about the access. We bought the back door keys. Cypherwall thought they were protecting dissidents. They were just gift-wrapping data for us. By next quarter, we'll have eyes on every transaction from Berlin to Beijing." Ronnie approached the table, moving with a silent, predatory grace that went unnoticed by men too in love with their own voices. She held a bottle of vintage Pinot Noir, the label facing out. "Gentlemen," she said, her voice flat and professional, "the 2005 Burgundy you requested." Caldwell didn't look at her. He waved a hand dismissively, continuing his tirade. "Pour it, and try not to drown the glass, sweetheart. I need my wits for the briefing tomorrow." Ronnie uncorked the bottle with a single fluid motion. No pop, just a sigh of air. She poured a tasting amount into Caldwell's glass. He swirled it, violently took a sip and grimaced. Tastes like vinegar. Did you store this next to the radiator? He finally looked up, his eyes glassy with arrogance, and half a bottle of scotch. I ordered the 05. This tastes like 08 swill. It is the 05, sir, Ronnie said calmly. Perhaps your palate is adjusting to the acidity of your previous drink. Caldwell's eyes narrowed. The table went quiet. The lawyer Peter looked nervous. Rich, it's fine. It's not fine, Caldwell snapped. He looked Ronnie up and down, sneering. I don't pay $500 a bottle to be lectured by a woman who probably drinks boxed wine in a studio apartment in Queens. Take it back. Bring me the manager. Ronnie didn't flinch. She didn't apologize. She simply looked at the bottle, then back at him. I can bring the manager, Mr. Caldwell. But Henry will tell you the same thing. The 05 Domaine de la Romanée Conti has a specific earthy finish. It's often mistaken for spoilage by those accustomed to sweeter domestic blends. The insult was subtle, wrapped in sommelier jargon, but it landed like a slap. Caldwell's face turned a shade of crimson that clashed with his tie. Get out, he hissed. Ronnie gave a stiff nod. As you wish. She retreated to the shadows near the service station. She wasn't angry. Anger was a waste of energy. She was observant. She watched Caldwell pull a secure tablet from his briefcase. He tapped the screen, showing a map to his lawyer. The server farm is here. Caldwell lowered his voice, but Ronnie, standing 15 feet away, read his lips as clearly as if he were shouting. In the basement of the consulate in Istanbul, Operation Black Box, we launch the extraction tonight. Ronnie froze. Her hand, holding a pitcher of water, tightened until her knuckles turned white. Istanbul, the consulate, Black Box. It wasn't just corporate espionage. Caldwell wasn't just buying a company. He was buying a list of active assets, deep cover agents. And Ronnie knew that list. She wrote half of it. 20 minutes later, the dynamic at table 4 had shifted from celebratory to conspiratorial. The alcohol was flowing freely now, loosening tongues that should have remained tied behind non-disclosure agreements. Ronnie stayed in the periphery, attending to other tables, but keeping her auditory focus locked on Caldwell. She had developed this skill, the cocktail party effect, weaponized during her time in the field. She could filter out the clatter of silverware and the jazz piano, isolating the frequency of Caldwell's baritone. The beauty of it, Caldwell was saying, leaning in close to Peter, is that the agency doesn't even know we have the file yet. We intercept the ghost protocol before they can scrub the servers. I have a buyer in Riyadh who's paying 8 figures just for the names starting with A through M. Ronnie felt a cold spike of adrenaline in her gut. A through M that included Alistair. It included Mercer, good men, fathers, assets she had personally handled in the Balkans. If Caldwell sold that list, they wouldn't just be burned, they would be executed within the week. She needed to confirm it. She needed him to say one specific thing that proved he wasn't just boasting. She grabbed a fresh basket of bread and moved back to the table. As she placed it down, she deliberately knocked a fork off the table with her hip. It clattered loudly. Clumsy cow, Caldwell muttered, not looking up from his tablet. He was scrolling through a dossier. Ronnie caught a glimpse of the screen. It was a blurry photo of a man entering a building. Apologies, Ronnie said, dropping to a knee to retrieve the fork. As she did, she spoke her voice, barely a whisper, pitched, so only Caldwell would hear it over the music. The man in the photo. He's limping on his left leg. The injury was from a failed extraction in Belgrade, 2011. Not Istanbul. Caldwell stopped scrolling. His hand hovered over the screen. He looked down at the waitress kneeling beside him. What did you say? He asked, his voice tight. Ronnie stood up, placing the dirty fork on her tray. She looked bored, disinterested. "The photo, sir. You're looking at the architect, aren't you?" He always favoured the left leg after the jump. Caldwell stared at her. The air left the immediate vicinity of the table. "How could you possibly know that photo? That's classified intel. It's not even on the public web." Ronnie shrugged, playing the role of the ignorant servant. "I watch a lot of movies, sir. He looks like an actor I saw once." She turned to leave, but Caldwell grabbed her wrist. His grip was hard, painful. The muscle men at the table tensed up, sensing their boss's aggression. "Sit down," Caldwell commanded. "I have other tables, sir." "I said sit down." He yanked her arm. Ronnie didn't sit. Instead, she rotated her wrist against the thumb, a basic Aikido break, forcing Caldwell to release her instantly or risk a dislocation. He yelped, pulling his hand back, massaging his wrist. "Don't touch the staff," Ronnie said. Her voice had changed. The gravel was gone. It was cold, steel-hard, and devoid of fear. "Who are you?" Caldwell stood up, knocking his chair back. The restaurant went silent. Heads turned. "Henri, get out here. Your waitress just assaulted me." Henri, the frantic French manager, came scurrying out of the kitchen, looking like he was about to have a coronary. "Mr. Caldwell." "Mon Dieu, what is happening?" "Veronica." "What did you do?" She twisted my wrist. "She's spying on my conversation." Caldwell was shouting now, the alcohol fueling his paranoia. "I want her fired. I want her arrested. I want her background check on my desk in 5 minutes. He turned to Ronnie, pointing a shaking finger in her face. "You think you can play games with me? I can end you. I can delete your identity. I can make it so you can't even get a job scrubbing toilets in this city. Do you know who I am?" Ronnie looked at Henri, then at the terrified Jenny, watching from the corner, and finally back at Caldwell. She sighed, untying the apron at her waist. "I know exactly who you are, Richard," she said. She dropped the "sir." "You're a middleman, a fence for digital secrets you don't understand." "You're fired," Henry squeaked. "Veronica, leave immediately." "I'm going Henri," Ronnie said. She folded the apron neatly and placed it on the table right next to Caldwell's secure tablet. She leaned in close to Caldwell. The room was deathly silent. Every ear was strained to hear. "You mentioned the ghost protocol," Ronnie said, her voice dropping to that terrifying whisper. "You think you bought the keys, but you didn't check the timestamp on the encryption, Richard." Caldwell's eyes widened. "What?" "The timestamp," she repeated. "If you check the metadata on the file you just bought, you'll see it was modified 4 hours ago by an admin user named Valkyrie." Caldwell went pale. Valkyrie. It was a myth in the black market circles, a ghost coder, a cleaner. "That's impossible," he stammered. "Valkyrie that's just a story." Ronnie smiled, a cold, sharp expression that made the blood run cold in his veins. "I used to work in intelligence," she said, "and Valkyrie isn't a story. She's the one who served you your wine." She turned and walked toward the exit. "Check your tablet, Richard. The file is empty. I wiped it while you were complaining about the Pinot. The silence in Le Jardin broke the moment the heavy oak door clicked shut behind Veronica. Inside, Richard Caldwell was frantically swiping at his tablet. The screen, usually a crisp display of encrypted data and stock tickers, was completely black. A single line of green text blinked in the center, mocking him with its simplicity. "Access denied. System purged." "It's gone," Caldwell whispered, his voice trembling. "The database, the blackmail files, the schematics for the drone project, it's all gone." Peter the lawyer leaned over, sweat beading on his forehead. "It can't be gone, Richard. It's cloud-backed, right? We have redundancies." "She didn't just delete the local files, you idiot!" Caldwell screamed, smashing the tablet onto the table. It cracked, sending a spiderweb fracture across the glass. "She injected a rootkit. I can see the code executing on the back end. She's scrubbing the remote servers. She's burning the cloud." He grabbed Peter by the lapels of his expensive suit. "Do you know what was on that drive? Names of every senator we've bribed. The blueprints for the back door we sold to the Chinese. If that data is gone, I'm bankrupt. If she kept a copy, I'm dead." Caldwell spun around to his 2 security guards who were looking confused and useless. "Don't just stand there, get her. She can't have gone far. She's a 40-year-old waitress, for God's sake." The 2 men bolted for the door, reaching for their earpieces. Outside, the New York night was cold and biting. Veronica. She was no longer Ronnie. Ronnie was a persona that had been discarded the moment she dropped. The apron moved with a purposeful velocity down the service alleyway. She didn't run. Running attracted attention. Running triggered the predatory instinct in observers. Instead, she walked with a fast, uneven gait, hunching her shoulders. In 10 seconds, she had pulled a crumpled grey beanie from her sock and pulled it low over her distinctive auburn hair. She reversed her reversible black vest to a dirty neon orange, the kind construction workers wore. She smeared a bit of alley grease on her cheek. She wasn't the elegant waitress anymore. She was invisible. Just another tired worker heading home. She turned the corner onto 5th Avenue just as the doors of Le Jardin burst open. She saw the 2 suits scan the street. Their eyes glossed right over her. They were looking for a woman in a black uniform with perfect posture. They weren't looking for a slouching figure in a neon vest lighting a cigarette. Veronica kept walking, her heart rate steady at 60 beats per minute. This was the discipline. The panic was there, a caged animal in her chest, scratching to get out, but she kept it locked down. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small black device, no larger than a pack of gum. It was a localized RF sniffer and data cloner, a piece of tech she'd kept from her days at the agency. It had been sitting in her apron pocket all night, silently siphoning the handshake protocols from Caldwell's tablet every time she poured his wine. When she had wiped his tablet, she hadn't just destroyed the data. She had moved it. She ducked into a subway station, the smell of ozone and stale urine flooding her senses. She didn't go through the turnstile. Instead, she found a maintenance door near the ticket booth, tapped a sequence on the keypad that hadn't changed in 20 years, and slipped into the darkness of the service tunnels. She walked for 10 minutes along the tracks, the rumble of trains vibrating through the soles of her cheap shoes. Finally, she reached an alcove hidden behind a rusted electrical box. She pulled a loose brick from the wall. Behind it was a burner phone and a Glock 19 with 2 spare magazines. She checked the chamber of the gun loaded and holstered it at the small of her back. Then she powered on the phone. She dialed a number she hadn't called in 6 years. It rang once. Twice. "The pizza shop is closed." A gruff male voice answered. "I'm not ordering a pepperoni Saul," Veronica said. "I'm calling about the laundry. It's dirty. It needs a heavy bleach cycle." There was a long pause on the other end. "Valkyrie." The voice was incredulous. "I thought you were dead. The official report said you burned up in a safe house in Damascus." "I got better," she said dryly. "I need a extraction, and I need a clean room. I just poked a very large bear, and he's going to have every camera in the city looking for my face within the hour." "Who's the bear?" Saul asked. "Richard Caldwell. Helix Dynamics." Saul let out a low whistle. "You don't do things by halves, do you? Caldwell owns the NYPD's surveillance contract. He is the camera's V. If he plugs your face into the God's Eye system, you won't make it to Brooklyn." "I know," Veronica said, checking her watch. "That's why I'm in the tunnels. I'm coming to you. Have the Faraday cage ready. I'm carrying a payload that could topple the administration." "Just like old times," Saul muttered. "Don't die on the way over. I still owe you $20. Veronica hung up and crushed the phone under her heel. She looked down the dark tunnel. The rats were scurrying away from the light of an oncoming train. She wasn't just a waitress anymore. The dormancy was over. Valkyrie was back online. Richard Caldwell sat in the back of his armored SUV, staring at a bank of monitors built into the partition. The vehicle was a mobile command center, currently double-parked outside the restaurant. "Report," he barked into a microphone. "We lost her, sir," the head of security said over the radio. "She vanished. No sign of her on the street level." "She didn't vanish," Caldwell screamed. "She's flesh and blood. Use the system." He began typing furiously on a keyboard. He logged into the Helix Dynamics administrative portal, a back door into the city's vast surveillance network. Helix had won the contract to modernize New York's traffic and security cameras 3 years ago. The public pitch was about optimizing traffic flow and catching jaywalkers. The reality was God's Eye, a real-time facial recognition integration that could track a target across 50,000 cameras simultaneously. "Input parameters," Caldwell muttered to himself. "Female, Caucasian, height 5'9", age bracket 35 to 45, last seen 62nd Street. He hit enter. The screens lit up. Thousands of faces from across the city flashed by in milliseconds. The algorithm churned discarding matches. Ping! A red box appeared on one of the screens. It was a grainy shot from a subway platform security camera at 63rd and Lexington. "Gotcha," Caldwell grinned. The image was blurry, showing a figure in a neon vest. The face was partially obscured by a beanie, but the gait analysis, the way she walked the stride length, was a 94% match to the waitress. "She's in the subway," Caldwell radioed his team. "Lexington line, moving south. Cut the power to the trains." "Sir," the security chief hesitated. "Shutting down the subway grid requires a mayoral authorization. It'll cause chaos." "Do I pay you to debate civic policy?" Caldwell hissed. "I said cut it, call the transit authority, and tell them we detected a terrorist threat on the line. Use the override code, Omega Blue. Just stop those trains." Caldwell sat back, watching the blue dot on his map move slowly through the tunnels. He picked up his phone and dialed a secure number. "Director Holloway," Caldwell said when the line clicked open. "This is a secure line, Richard. It's 10 o'clock p.m. Why are you calling?" The voice was smooth, bureaucratic, and icy. "We have a leak," Caldwell said. "The waitress at Le Jardin. She's an ex-asset. She knew about Operation Black Box. She knew about the Belgrade extraction." There was a silence on the line, so profound it felt heavy. "Describe her," Holloway commanded. "Auburn hair, sharp features, used a wrist lock on me, called herself—" She made a joke about it. Said she was Valkyrie. The sound of glass breaking came from Holloway's end. "You said Valkyrie?" "Yes." "Who is she?" "She's not a who, Richard. She's a what?" Holloway's voice lost its composure. "Veronica Tate, code-named Valkyrie. She was the agency's top cleaner for a decade. We sanctioned her termination 6 years ago. She's supposed to be Ash." "Well, the Ash just stole the entire asset list," Caldwell said. "I'm tracking her now. She's in the subway tunnels." "Listen to me very carefully," Holloway said. "Do not try to apprehend her. Do not try to interrogate her. Your security team is playing paintball. She is fighting a war. If you corner her, she will kill every single one of your men." "I have tech," Caldwell argued. "I have numbers." "She has training that we outlawed in the 90s, Holloway snapped. "I am dispatching a wet work team, force recon, level 5 clearance. Keep her pinned down, but do not engage. If she gets out of those tunnels with that list, Richard, neither of us will live to see the sunrise." The line went dead. Underground, the lights flickered and died. Veronica stopped moving. The emergency lights bathed the tunnel in an eerie red glow. The hum of the third rail ceased. The silence was absolute. "Smart," she whispered to herself. She knew what this meant. They were boxing her in. They had cut the power to stop the trains, which meant they were coming in on foot. And they wouldn't be sending cops. Cops shouted, "Freeze!" The people coming for her would just shoot. She was 2 miles from Saul's safe house in the Lower East Side. The tunnel was the fastest route, but now it was a kill box. She checked her Glock. 15 rounds in the mag, 1 in the chamber. 30 rounds total with the spares. She needed an equalizer. She scanned the tunnel. She was near a maintenance junction. She saw a transformer box and a pile of discarded construction materials, rebar wire buckets of solvent. Veronica smiled. It was a grim smile. She remembered a mission in Chechnya, where she held off a platoon with a propane tank and a roll of duct tape. She holstered her gun and started working. She stripped the copper wire from the transformer. She broke the solvent buckets, pouring the chemical sludge across the narrow walkway of the tunnel. She rigged a tripwire using the copper and connected it to the high-voltage capacitor she pried from the emergency lighting box. It was a crude trap, an arc flash generator. If someone broke the wire, the capacitor would discharge 10,000 volts into the puddle of solvent. It wouldn't just shock them, it would create a flash of heat hot enough to melt synthetic tactical gear and blind anyone wearing night vision goggles. She set the trap and retreated 50 yards back into the shadows, finding a vantage point atop a bundle of conduit pipes near the ceiling. She controlled her breathing. In holdout, she lowered her body temperature, mentally slowing her metabolism, becoming one with the cold concrete. 10 minutes later, she saw them. 6 figures moving in tactical formation. No flashlights. They were wearing quad nods, panoramic night vision. They moved silently, communicating with hand signals. This wasn't private security. This was a hit squad. Caldwell had called in the big guns. The point man raised a fist. The squad halted. They scanned the tunnel. "Thermal is picking up a heat signature ahead," one of them whispered into a comms unit. "Stationary. Probably hiding." "Flush her out," the team leader signaled. They moved forward. The point man stepped into the puddle of solvent. He didn't notice it. His boots were thick. His shin hit the copper wire. Snap! The tunnel exploded in a blinding ball of blue-white lightning. The sound was like a thunderclap trapped in a bottle. The solvent ignited instantly. The point man screamed as the electrical arc superheated the air around him. The flash overloaded the night vision goggles of the 3 men behind him, blinding them instantly with whiteout intensity. "Contact, contact, front!" Someone screamed. Veronica dropped from the ceiling behind the rear guard. She didn't use her gun yet. A gun was loud. She struck the last man in the throat with the ridge of her hand, collapsing his windpipe. As he fell, she grabbed his sidearm, a suppressed MP5, and spun. Thwip! 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 3 controlled bursts. The 3 blinded men went down. The team leader, shielding his eyes from the burning solvent, spun around, firing blindly into the dark. Bullets sparked off the concrete walls. Veronica rolled behind a concrete pillar. "You're sloppy," she called out, her voice echoing everywhere. "You relied on the tech. You forgot to look with your eyes." "Valkyrie," the team leader shouted, terrified. "We have orders. You can't run from the agency." "I'm not running from the agency," Veronica replied, checking the mag on the stolen MP5. "I'm coming for it." She stepped out from behind the pillar. The team leader raised his rifle, but he was too slow. Veronica put a single round through his shoulder, dropping him, then kicked the weapon away. She stood over him. He was gasping for air, looking up at the waitress, who had just dismantled a force recon team in under 30 seconds. "Tell Holloway," she said, leaning down, "that he should have checked the body in Damascus. It wasn't me." She knocked him unconscious with the butt of the rifle. The tunnel was quiet again, save for the crackle of the electrical fire. Veronica didn't linger. She jogged toward the exit ladder. She had the data. She had the weapons. And now she had confirmed who was pulling the strings. The war had officially begun. The laundromat was actually a laundromat. That was the beauty of Saul's operation. It was a dingy fluorescent-lit shop in the Lower East Side that smelled of cheap detergent mildew and despair. It was open 24 hours, usually occupied by insomniacs and shift workers who were too tired to notice if the person folding sheets in the corner was a ghost. Veronica entered through the back alley, picking the lock on the reinforced steel door in under 10 seconds. She slipped inside the hum of 30 industrial dryers, masking the sound of her boots on the linoleum. She found Saul in the back office, a room that should have contained cleaning supplies, but instead housed enough server racks to run a small country. Saul was a man who looked like he was carved out of old leather, wrinkled, tough, and smelling of cigar smoke. He was 70, confined to a wheelchair after a botched extraction in Kiev, but his mind was still the sharpest weapon in the room. He didn't turn around when she entered. He was typing on a keyboard that had no letters on the keys. "You look like hell, V," he rumbled. "I feel worse," Veronica said, holstering the MP5 on a filing cabinet. She peeled off the neon vest and the beanie, shaking out her auburn hair. She was covered in soot grease and the blood of the man she'd pistol-whipped. "I need a terminal, air-gapped, and I need coffee, black." Saul spun his chair around. His eyes widened slightly when he saw the blood. "You killed a force recon team." "I incapacitated them," Veronica corrected, grabbing a bottle of water from his mini-fridge and downing it in one go. "They'll have headaches and burn scars, but they'll live. Holloway sent them." "Holloway?" Saul spat the name like a curse. "I always knew that man was a snake. He's the one who signed off on your burn notice." "He's doing more than that, Saul. Look at this." She pulled the data cloning device from her pocket and plugged it into the isolated terminal Saul pointed to. The screen flickered to life. Lines of code cascaded down the monitor. Saul rolled closer, his fingers flying across the keyboard, decrypting the packet Veronica had stolen from Caldwell's wine-soaked tablet. "Standard AES, 256 encryption," Saul muttered. "Child's play. Caldwell is arrogant. He thinks money buys security." He hit a final key. The code resolved into a directory of folders. Saul clicked the first one. A spreadsheet opened. Silence filled the small room, heavier than the humidity of the dryers outside. "My God," Saul whispered. He took his glasses off, cleaning them with a trembling hand. Veronica leaned over his shoulder. The spreadsheet was a ledger. It had names, dates, prices, and buyers. "It's an auction block," Veronica said, her voice hollow. "They aren't just selling intel, Saul. They're selling people." She pointed to a line item, Asset Nightingale. Location, Berlin. Bidder, FSB. Price, $4.5 million. Nightingale, Saul murmured. "That's Sarah Jenkins. She's deep cover in the German Chancellery. She has a 3-year-old daughter." "Had," Veronica corrected coldly. "Look at the status." Status liquidated. Veronica felt a cold rage settle in her stomach, turning into a hard, heavy stone. Caldwell and Holloway aren't just traitors, they're butchers. They're selling the locations of active U.S. agents to foreign intelligence services, cartels, terrorist cells, anyone with the cash. "It's a fire sale," Saul said, his face pale. "They're liquidating the agency's human assets to fund what He opened another folder labeled Project Olympus. Blueprints filled the screen. It was a drone schematic, but not military. It was domestic. Micro-drones. Saul analyzed. Size of a housefly, facial recognition, lethal payload capability, designed for urban swarm deployment. They're building a private assassination grid, Veronica realized. They sell the old agents to fund the new tech. They wipe the board clean of anyone who has a conscience and replace them with machines that follow orders without question. Saul looked up at her. V, this is the end of the world kind of stuff. If you go public with this, the government falls. The CIA, the NSA, they'll all be dismantled. The chaos is already here, Saul, Veronica said. She stared at the screen, her reflection ghosted over the names of dead friends. They think I'm dead. They think I'm just a waitress who got lucky. You were dead, Saul reminded her gently. We got you out. We gave you a new life. You had the apartment, the job, the quiet. Why did you intervene? Veronica looked down at her hands, the calluses from the tray, the scars from the trigger. Because he was rude to the staff, she said softly. It was a joke, but neither of them laughed. What's the play? Saul asked. We can upload this to the Times, WikiLeaks, The Guardian. Be gone before it hits the servers. No, Veronica shook her head. If we leak it, Holloway goes to ground. He disappears. He has billions stashed away. He'll just restart somewhere else. And Caldwell, he'll lawyer up and blame a rogue employee. She picked up the MP5. She checked the action. I don't want a scandal, Saul. I want a reckoning. Where are you going? Tonight is the Helix Dynamics Shareholders Gala, Veronica said. It's at the Met. Caldwell will be there. Holloway will be there to reassure him. The Met. Saul laughed nervously. It's a Fortress V, private security, NYPD metal detectors, bomb sniffers. You can't just walk in with a submachine gun. Veronica smiled. It was the smile she used when a customer asked for a substitution on a Prix Fix menu. I'm not going in as a soldier, Saul. I'm going in as the help. She turned to the rack of clothes Saul kept for emergencies. She pushed aside the tactical vests and jumpsuits until she found what she was looking for. A crisp white tuxedo shirt, a black bow tie, and a server's vest. Catering companies are always short-staffed, she said, holding up the uniform. And nobody looks at the waiter's face. They only look at the tray. The Metropolitan Museum of Art was glowing like a lantern against the dark expanse of Central Park. Limousines idled in a line that stretched for 3 blocks. The elite of New York and the world were filing up the grand steps, a parade of diamond silk and hypocrisy. Inside the Temple of Denda, the party was in full swing. A string quartet played Debussy, while waiters circulated with champagne and caviar. The room was a sea of black tuxedos and designer gowns reflecting off the ancient Egyptian sandstone. Richard Caldwell stood near the temple's reflecting pool, holding a glass of scotch he was drinking too quickly. He looked terrible. His eyes were bloodshot, his skin pasty. He kept checking his phone every 30 seconds. Director Holloway stood beside him. Holloway was a man who looked like he had been born in a suit. Silver hair, rimless glasses, an expression of permanent mild distaste. He sipped sparkling water. "Stop fidgeting, Richard," Holloway hissed under his breath. "You look guilty." "She's out there, Thomas," Caldwell whispered, sweat dripping down his collar. "My team found the Force Recon Squad. They were dismantled. One woman did that. And she has the drive. We have contained the situation." Holloway lied smoothly. "My analysts are scrubbing the network. Even if she releases the data, we have a disinformation campaign ready to launch. We'll paint her as a mentally unstable conspiracy theorist. A disgruntled employee with a history of drug abuse. Nobody will believe her. She knows about Olympus, Caldwell said. She knows about the auction. She is one woman against the military-industrial complex, Holloway said, taking a sip of water. She is a relic, an analog tool in a digital world. We will find her, and we will delete her. Neither of them noticed the server approaching them with a tray of hors d'oeuvres. She moved with the perfect rhythmic glide of a seasoned professional. Her hair was pulled back in a severe bun, dyed a temporary jet black. She wore thick-rimmed glasses that obscured her eyes. Her posture was subservient head, tilted slightly down. "Smoked salmon. Blinny, sir?" she asked. Caldwell waved her away without looking. "No, sir." She offered the tray to Holloway. Holloway glanced at the tray. "I don't eat farmed salmon." "It's wild caught, sir," the server said, "from the Copper River. Very rare." Holloway paused. He looked at the server's hands. He saw the calluses. He looked up, meeting her eyes behind the glasses. Veronica smiled. "Hello, Thomas," she whispered. Holloway opened his mouth to scream, but Veronica was faster. She didn't pull a gun. That would be messy. Instead, she tripped. It was a theatrical, clumsy stumble. The tray of appetizers went flying. The champagne flutes crashed onto the stone floor. "Oh, I am so clumsy," she cried out, her voice pitching up to a frantic soprano. As she fell, she grabbed Holloway's arm to steady herself. In the chaos of the crash with salmon and glass, flying everywhere, nobody saw her. Other hand slip a small circular device into Holloway's jacket pocket. Nor did they feel the microscopic prick of the needle hidden in her ring as she brushed against Caldwell's hand. "You idiot!" Caldwell shouted, jumping back as champagne soaked his trousers. "Look what you've done." Security descended instantly. Two large men in earpieces grabbed Veronica by the arms. I'm so sorry," Veronica wailed, playing the part of the terrified catering staff perfectly. "I tripped, the floor is slippery. Get her out of here," Holloway commanded, brushing crumbs off his lapel. His heart was hammering against his ribs. He knew it was her, but he couldn't make a scene here. Not in front of the senators, not in front of the press. "Take her to the back room, quietly." The guards dragged Veronica away, her feet skidding on the floor. She looked back at Holloway and Caldwell, her expression shifting from terror to a cold, deadly satisfaction. As the heavy doors of the service corridor closed behind them, Holloway turned to Caldwell. "It's her," he hissed. "She's in custody. We have her." "She's insane," Caldwell said, wiping his hand where she had touched him. It was itching. Why did she just spill food on us? She could have shot us. "She's making a scene to get arrested," Holloway deduced. "She thinks the police will protect her. She's trying to get into the system." "Well, joke's on her," Caldwell sneered. "I own the precinct." Suddenly the lights in the Temple of Dendor flickered. A high-pitched feedback whine tore through the speakers, causing the guests to cover their ears. The music stopped. The giant projection screens, which had been displaying the Helix Dynamics logo, turned static grey. Then a voice boomed through the hall. It wasn't the string quartet. It was a recording. "Gentlemen, the 05 Burgundy you requested." Caldwell froze. It was the audio from the restaurant. "It's not about the code, Peter. It's about the access. We bought the back door keys. By next quarter, we'll have eyes on every transaction from Berlin to Beijing." The guests stopped talking. The senators in the front row looked up, confused. Then the screen changed. It wasn't a logo anymore. It was a live feed. It was a camera view from inside the service corridor. Veronica was standing there, the two security guards unconscious on the floor at her feet. She had slipped her cuffs a paperclip, and 3 seconds was all it took. She was looking directly into the security camera she had hacked. She adjusted her glasses. "Good evening, everyone," Veronica said, her voice projected into the main hall, clear and amplified. "I'm sorry about the salmon, but I thought you should know what you're celebrating tonight. Cut the feed," Holloway screamed into his radio. "Cut the power." But the feed didn't cut. Veronica held up a phone. "Director Holloway," she said on the screen. "You checked your pocket yet?" Holloway froze. He reached into his jacket pocket. He pulled out the small circular device she had planted. It wasn't a bomb, it was a projector. He dropped it, but it was too late. The device activated, projecting a hologram onto the floor in the middle of the party. It was a 3D rotating map of the auction block. Names, faces, prices. And then the audio played again, Holloway's voice this time. "She is one woman against the military-industrial complex. We will find her, and we will delete her." Panic erupted in the hall. Reporters were flashing cameras at the screen. Senators were scrambling for the exits. Caldwell grabbed his chest. The itch on his hand had turned into a burning fire. His vision was blurring. "What?" he gasped. "What did you give me?" On the screen, Veronica leaned in close to the lens. "A paralytic agent, Richard," she said. "Derived from the pufferfish. You sold the formula to the North Koreans last year. I thought you might want a free sample. Don't worry, it wears off in... Oh wait, no, that version doesn't wear off." Caldwell's knees gave way. He collapsed onto the stone floor, paralyzed, his eyes wide with terror, staring up at the giant screen where the waitress was judging him. Holloway looked around. His empire was crumbling in real time. The live stream was hitting the internet. He could hear the sirens outside, not the police he owned, but the feds, the FBI, the ones not on the payroll. He looked at the screen. "You can't win, Valkyrie," he shouted at the monitor, losing his mind. "I am the agency." "No, Thomas," Veronica said, picking up the MP5 she had taped under a serving cart in the hallway earlier. "You used to work in intelligence. Now," she cocked the weapon, "now you're just a customer who didn't pay the bill." The great hall of the Metropolitan Museum of Art had descended into a level of bedlam usually reserved for stock market crashes or natural disasters. The hologram of the auction block was still rotating in the center of the room, casting a ghostly blue light over the terrified faces of New York's elite. Richard Caldwell lay rigid on the floor, his eyes darting, frantically trapped in his own body by the pufferfish neurotoxin. Veronica didn't stick around to watch the panic. She knew the rhythm of these things. First came the confusion, then the terror, and finally the containment. The FBI and Homeland Security were already breaching the perimeter, their sirens wailing a discordant symphony down Fifth Avenue. She moved quickly through the service corridors, ditching the server's vest and the glasses. She pulled a black windbreaker from a janitor's locker she'd staged earlier, zipped it up to her chin, and slicked her hair back. In 3 seconds, she transformed from clumsy waitress to tactical response officer. But her earpiece crackled. It was Saul. "V, we have a problem." Saul's voice was urgent, lacking its usual cynical drawl. "I'm monitoring Holloway's encrypted comms. He just sent a signal to the Olympus prototype servers. He initiated the burn protocol." Veronica stopped dead in the hallway, her hand hovering over the exit bar. "Define burn, Saul." "It's a scorched earth policy." Saul explained, the sound of rapid typing filling the line. "He's not just wiping the data. He's activated the drones stored in the Helix warehouse in the Navy Yard. They're programmed to seek and destroy all evidence and all witnesses. That includes the servers, the physical backups, and anyone currently tagged as a hostile in the system." "Am I tagged?" Veronica asked, checking her MP5. "You, me, and interestingly enough Caldwell," Saul said. "He's tying up loose ends. If those drones launch, they'll swarm the Met. It'll be a massacre." Veronica cursed under her breath. She could leave. She could slip out the back, melt into the park, and be in a safe house in Jersey by dawn. But if she did, the drones would turn the museum into a slaughterhouse to get to Caldwell. Can you jam them? Not from here. The signal is hard-lined. You need to sever the connection at the source. Halloway has a mobile command, uplinking from his limousine in the underground garage. You have to stop him before the upload completes. You have 3 minutes. Veronica spun on her heel. The exit was behind her. The war was downstairs. She sprinted toward the freight elevator, sliding down the cables to bypass the electronic locks. She landed in the sub-basement garage with a heavy thud. The garage was dimly lit, smelling of gasoline and exhaust. In the far corner, surrounded by 3 black Suburbans, was Halloway's armored limousine. The engine was idling. A satellite dish on the roof was rotating, seeking a lock. Standing between her and the limo was the cleaning crew. 4 men. Unlike the Force Recon team in the tunnel, these men weren't military. They were private contractors, mercenaries in expensive suits, with Sig Sauer P226s drawn. They saw her instantly. "Contact!" one shouted. Veronica didn't seek cover. She sought momentum. She vaulted over the hood of a parked Tesla, the bullets sparking against the metal where she had been a fraction of a second before. She was a blur of motion, a kinetic weapon honed by 20 years of shadow warfare. She slid across the concrete, firing the MP5 in a sweeping arc. 2 of the mercenaries went down, clutching their legs. She shot to disable, not to kill, precisely because wounded men require care from their teammates. The tactic worked. The other 2 hesitated, looking at their fallen comrades. That second cost them. Veronica closed the distance. She used the empty submachine gun as a club, striking the 3rd man across the temple. He crumbled. The 4th man lunged with a knife, but Veronica stepped inside his guard, trapping his arm and driving her knee into his solar plexus with the force of a pile driver. He gasped, dropping the knife. She shoved him aside and sprinted for the limo. The window rolled down. Thomas Halloway sat there, a tablet in his lap. The upload bar was at 98%. "It's over, Valkyrie!" Halloway shouted, his face twisted in a rictus of panic and rage. "You can't stop the future. I don't want to stop the future. Thomas," Veronica said, panting, leveling her pistol at him. "I just want to cancel your subscription." She didn't shoot him. She shot the tablet. The bullet shattered the device in his hands. The screen went black. The satellite dish on the roof stopped rotating and powered down. Upload failed. Halloway stared at the smoking ruin of his tablet, then up at Veronica. He looked small, defeated. An old man in a car that wasn't going anywhere. "You realize," Halloway whispered, "that without the agency protection, I'm a dead man. The Russians, the cartels, they saw the list. They know I sold them out." "I know," Veronica said coldly. "That's why I'm not killing you. Death is too easy. You're going to spend the rest of your short life looking over your shoulder, wondering which one of your former customers is coming to collect." She heard the tires screeching down the ramp. The FBI tactical team swarmed the garage, weapons raised. "Drop the weapon, FBI!" Veronica looked at Halloway, then at the approaching agents. She smiled. "Saul," she tapped her earpiece, "kill the lights." "With pleasure." The garage plunged into total darkness. "Do not move," the FBI lead screamed. Flashlights cut through the gloom, sweeping frantically. But when the beams landed on the limousine, only Halloway was there, shivering in the back seat, surrounded by his groaning mercenaries. The woman was gone. 3 weeks later. The diner in rural Montana was quiet. The coffee was hot and the pie was decent. Veronica sat in a booth near the window, watching the rain streak against the glass. She looked different. Her hair was blonde now, cut into a bob. She wore a flannel shirt and jeans. The TV above the counter was playing a news report. Former Helix Dynamics CEO Richard Caldwell remains in critical condition following a stroke, while former intelligence director Thomas Halloway has been indicted on 45 counts of treason and conspiracy. The leaked documents, now known as the Valkyrie Files, have led to the dismantling of the entire Olympus program. The waitress, a young girl named Sarah, walked over with a coffee pot. "More coffee, Hon." "Please," Veronica said, smiling. A real smile this time. It reached her eyes. "You know," Sarah said, pouring the coffee. "You look familiar. Did you used to work in the city?" Veronica took a sip of the coffee. It was warm. It tasted like freedom. "No," Veronica said softly. "I used to work in intelligence." Sarah laughed. "Intelligence, you mean like a spy?" Veronica looked out the window where a black sedan was driving slowly past the diner. She noted the license plate, the tint of the windows, and the driver's profile in the reflection of the glass. She calculated the extraction route through the kitchen and the position of the steak knife on the table. Then the car drove on. Just a passing traveler. Veronica relaxed. "Something like that," she said, leaving a $20 bill on the table. "But mostly, I just served people what they deserved." She stood up, buttoned her coat, and walked out into the rain. The world was still dangerous. The list was still out there. But for the first time in a long time, the ghost was no longer haunting the machine. She was driving it. That is the story of how one underestimated waitress brought down an empire with a bottle of Pinot Noir and a burning need for justice. It reminds us that power isn't about the suit you wear or the title on your door. It's about what you're capable of when pushed into a corner. Veronica Tate proves that the most dangerous person in the room is often the one you don't notice. If you enjoyed this story of espionage revenge and high-stakes justice, make sure to hit that like button. It helps the algorithm find more agents like you. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a briefing. And tell me in the comments, if you found a tablet with the world's secrets on it, would you leak it or would you run Stay Sharp? I'll see you in the next video.